It was around a year ago where we had a whole controversy over Pokemon Sword and Shield. And so hello everyone, it is I, the Obsessive Gamer. So around that time, I made some videos talking about this controversy, and to bring some of you up to date, which you may not remember or know what this controversy was about. Basically, with Pokemon Sword and Shield, they had announced that not every Pokemon was gonna appear in the game, or between both games rather, and there was no way to transfer them from older Pokemon. They would not be within the data whatsoever. And this pissed off a lot of people because this was the first time it was happening, and they were saying Game Freak is being lazy. Game Freak is not doing properly. Look at all these other flaws within the game too, such as the graphics not looking as great as they should compared to other games like Xenoblade, Breath of the Wild, etc., and so on and so forth with many of these other problems. And so I made a video last year called The Problems with Game Freak, or something like that. I actually can't remember the title because it was last year. And it did actually kind of decently for this channel. I emphasize, for this channel. But, yeah, so we had a lot of good discussions about it. And I noticed one thing, and this is also my own fault too for last year. The blame was solely on Game Freak. Now, I have made a video recently about Pokemon Unite saying that the main perpetrator behind Pokemon Unite's announcement, and the way it was announced rather, was the Pokemon Company's fault, not Game Freak, as many people might start to blame for that. Even though the title was titled as Game Freak, that was done just so I would get you guys in and for me to explain to you guys that it's actually the Pokemon Company. But going over this controversy that went last year, the idea is, was it actually justified? Was our complaining justified? Did it do anything? Well, looking over what we had, we complained about the lack of Pokemon in the game. We got eventually 400 Pokemon in the game, which I thought was a good number for what we had. Maybe it's just because I'm an adult now and I don't have so much time to look around stuff. But I had a fair amount of time still collecting them. I mean, I would have loved the full thing to be there, so just keep going on and on my free time with it. But it was eventually confirmed with the DLC we would be getting it. In which case, this goes back to the fact that Junichi Matsuda told us that they're not going to be in this game. They won't come to this game. They will come maybe to other games coming up, but not to this game. Something that they should have not said, and should have maybe said it's coming to the DLC. It's going to come in some update, etc. But they didn't, and it just pissed off people, and we made videos after videos on this stuff, as did I. Mine came out like right after he said that too. And that's the thing. Game Freak said some really boneheaded things last year about the fact that these Pokemon would not be in the game and they would not come at all. And this is where people pretty much exploded with videos and complaints all over the place. Dislikes, hitting Junichi Matsuda's Twitter account constantly on every little post. And Game Freak was getting heat for it. Soon we started seeing attacks on other parts of the game. Like the fact that, this infamous tree looked like it belonged from Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, an N64 game, and the fact that the animations of this game sucked, contrary to the fact that they said it would have high quality animation, in which case it did have some high quality animation here and there for special attacks, like this here, but not so much for simple, smaller attacks like this. While meanwhile in Pokemon Stadium, we had actually some decent looking ones even for the smaller attacks. And of course the fact that there wasn't a true open world game, which was what many people were hoping for, and limited to rather a small zone within the middle of the game. Now, I played the game fully. I got every single Pokemon in there at 400 Pokemon there is. And I did enjoy the game. It was, in my opinion, a huge step forward from Pokemon Sun and Moon in almost every aspect. It brought back the gyms, it had better pacing, it didn't hold your hand all the way through. I thought the characters were better, and the list can go on of why I thought it was better. Maybe I'll one day make a video on that. But when it comes down to it, it still could have been better in many of our eyes. And I remember a lot of people were blaming this on Game Freak and why it wasn't better, and the fact that it felt like a rush job to many people. And this is the thing, I don't think Game Freak deserved that kind of attack, because it honestly was not Game Freak's fault. It was actually the Pokemon Company's fault. Which, to bring you up to speed, the Pokemon Company and Game Freak are not the same company, even though some of you do actually think that. Now, the Pokemon Company is an independent company that was made by both Game Freak and Nintendo that plans the marketing, the distribution, and planning of Pokemon for all merchandise, cards, anime, and games. And so, for the anime, the cards, and the games to come out at the same time, they say they has to come out this time, no ifs and or buts. So Game Freak, being just the developer of this game, has a timeline to go forward with, and this is what Pokemon Sword and Shield suffered from, which is why it only had roughly a 2-year development time, and it had to pretty much keep up with a game like Xenoblade, which is what people wanted, something like Breath of the Wild, which both of those games had roughly 5 years of development time. However, this only had 2 years, and it showed pretty damn hard. But everyone thought it was Game Freak being lazy. I would say they weren't being lazy. They tried what they could with 2 years, but they had bad PR moves from people like Junichi Matsuda saying stuff like that and not saying why it was like that, and if there was going to be anything more coming out for it. Now, I understand, maybe the Pokemon Company did not allow Junichi Matsuda to say there was a DLC coming out, but he could say, we aren't going to comment about this right now, but we may tell you something more about Pokemon coming in some sort of an update. Or the Pokemon Company could have just lifted a restriction and told them, well, you could say that there's a DLC coming out or an update with more Pokemon being added on later, which would have maybe slowed down the hate. Granted, the Pokemon Company probably didn't give a shit simply because this game sold like gangbusters. I mean, I was expecting it, maybe not to these numbers, but I was still expecting it to sell stupid high, and it did. So the thing is, well, yes, we want environments like in Xenoblade or Breath of the Wild in this game. Yes, we want every Pokemon there. Yes, we want a more fleshed out game overall. But 2 years of development time provided by the Pokemon Company was not good enough for Game Freak. I mean, they used to be able to pump out games quicker than that, back all the way up till Generation 5. But guess what happened? 3D happened. And 3D development is just insanely expensive, insanely time consuming. I mean, yes, the money problem is not a thing, but time is a thing, and that's where it gets tough with 3D games. The Pokemon Company wants Game Freak to still pump out at the pace that they pumped out 2D games. They cannot, and they need at least 1 or 2 years at minimum to be able to do a properly fleshed out game, realistically. Now, we got these DLCs that came out, and they did actually do a lot of things that we wanted. They gave us more Pokemon, 200 more. We got Pokemon following us. I was not expecting that at all, but it happened. We got the entire overworld of that game being an actual free roaming world, like the Wild Zone. And it really just showed that with a little bit of more time, Game Freak could have actually given these things in the main game too, but they knew they couldn't, because there just wasn't time, and they just didn't know how to respond to it, because they're just terrible at that, as we've witnessed. In fact, in Let's Go games, when Junichi Matsuda said you can't catch Pokemon in the traditional manner, that pissed off people. When Junichi Matsuda announced the fact that you cannot catch all the Pokemon in Sword and Shield, that also pissed off people. In other words, do not let Junichi Matsuda be your PR person for Pokemon. Game Freak, please and thank you. And so that's the thing. Game Freak is not who we should have blamed last year, as so many of us did. It should have been the Pokemon Company. That's who we should have complained to. That's who we should have attacked the whole time through. That's who we should have emailed and protested. While yes, it would have probably done nothing just because, they knew the game was going to sell well, being nothing but, a money bank that they are rather than actual developers with heart. Game Freak, however, received that blunt, and I've heard morale actually was pretty down according to rumors. Though it's rumors, so who knows, but I wouldn't be surprised if morale was down there. However, this is the problem. Game Freak has a PR problem, and the Pokemon Company lets Game Freak take that rather than let themselves take that and solve that problem either. So I think we all overreacted a bit last year over that, and I did like the games. I thought they were a good step forward, and the DLC has just taken that even further. Yes, I want a truly fleshed out Pokemon game to be more on the lines of a more traditional RPG of modern days, but until the Pokemon Company can, I say, do more realistic timelines and actually space out their stuff with anime, cards, and video games not being tied to each other all the freaking time, maybe then we can actually get a properly fleshed out Pokemon game. However, I'm still happy with what I got in the end, and maybe some of you, and I know a lot of people were as well, even if we have some complaints about the game, and I do, but I enjoyed it overall, even if it was like double the price. But anyways, everyone, why don't you hit that like and subscribe button if you liked the video, and hit the dislike if you didn't, and tell me below, what do you think about that controversy? Do you think we should have directly targeted our hate towards the Pokemon Company instead? And do you still have any more complaints about Pokemon even with the DLC? And if you do, what are they? So everyone, thank you for watching.